everybody, welcome back to Amber Unabridged. I'm Amber, and this is the first chapter video for my hashtag Read Genji, Tale of Genji read-along. So if you are not familiar with what I'm trying to do here, go watch my announcement video. I will leave a link to it in the description. I'll also probably honestly just make a playlist for all of my Genji videos. But essentially, this video is for the first chapter of this book. So I am reading The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu. And do I still have my old bookmark in here? If you don't know what this book is, go watch my announcement video. That will explain it. I'm not going to repeat it every time I start a new chapter video, but I'm reading it and I'm very excited. Chapter 1 is Kiritsubo, the Lady of the Paolonia Courtyard Chambers. That is the name of the chapter title in the Dennis Washburn translation. All of the title chapters vary slightly between the different translations, but since this is the version I'm reading, this is what I will refer to it as. I know in my announcement video I talked a lot about wanting to do a lot of planning and reference a lot of resources and stuff. I didn't quite get there in time for filming this video. I do have this reader's guide. I've begun to read a little bit about Heian Japan, which is the time period that Genji was written in and is set in. And I read the introduction as well. So yeah, I've got this. I didn't use it a whole lot. I don't have much to reference from it for the sake of this video. So I'm just going to talk about what happened in the first chapter, some of the characters that we've met so far, some of the relationships, and maybe offer some historical context as well. So one of the main things to keep in mind when reading The Tale of Genji is that it's not really about the story. The story is really just a framework through which Lady Murasaki can talk about the transience of beauty, essentially, which is huge in like Japanese aesthetic, in art form, in feelings, in emotion, in every like artistic manifestation in the Heian period, and because of this book today as well. We start off chapter 1, Kiritsubo, with learning that we're spending time with an emperor, the emperor of Japan, and that he's in love with this woman in the Paolonia courtyard. That's where her chambers are, because emperors have like multiple consorts. So this is where she resides. And so a lot of the women in Genji do not receive real names. They are, actually, for a matter of, most men aren't either. Men are usually named by their rank or their position in the court. Women are usually named by their residence or some aspect of their aesthetic, like a color that they wear a lot or something to that effect. So in chapter 1, we meet the emperor and the love of his life, Kiritsubo, because she lives in the Kiritsubo, which is the Paolonia courtyard chambers. Now, he is like kind of obsessed with her because she's beautiful, apparently, and she does not have a high rank in the court. Her family, like her father specifically, was not a high-ranking official or high in the court like hierarchy. He was the I made a chart. My chart is a mess. I should have started it in the center of the page because it's a nightmare. Fixed it. Anyway, the father of Kiritsubo was the major counselor. I feel like it should have been the left and the right. I missed that in my notes somehow, and I'm not going to try to find it right now. But essentially, she did not have a lot of support at court. So the emperor was really obsessed with her because she was extremely beautiful, extremely accomplished. She could play whatever instruments very well. She could sing. She could probably dance and do like calligraphy, you know, the various art forms that were popular at that time. And the emperor just loved her. And he was obsessed with her. And he spent a lot of time with her, just hanging out and boning down. So the other consorts in the palace were getting jealous. And they were like, well, this is really inappropriate. The emperor is not supposed to spend time with one person all the time. He's supposed to kind of spread the love. And he wasn't doing that because he was obsessed with Kiritsubo. So the Kokiden consort in particular was extremely, just like really kind of ill-tempered, it seems. But also, I think, really possessive because she had borne the emperor's first son, who was the, like, crown prince, essentially, though he had not officially been named the heir apparent at that point. So she, in particular, really hated Kiritsubo. All of the other consorts also hated Kiritsubo, and she received a lot of abuse from them. They would bully her. They would harass her. It was a bad time. And so she fell ill, apparently because of all of this harassment. And the emperor was distraught. He didn't know what to do to help her, but refused to let her go. Or I don't know if that's even allowed necessarily. Once you're a consort for the emperor, you might just, that's just where you live forever until he dies or you die. But any which way, he was mourning about how he was distraught over the fact that he couldn't help her, but he continued to exhibit behaviors that everybody else hated, and they couldn't take it out on him because he was the emperor, so they took it out on Kiritsubo. One of the main reasons why the Kokiden consort hated Kiritsubo so much was because she eventually bore the emperor a son. A beautiful, shining prince of a son. That's Genji's official nickname, by the way, is the Radiant Prince. Or Shining Prince. It depends on the translation, I think. But because Kiritsubo bore this beautiful son, because beauty is everything, the Kokiden consort who had born the emperor's eldest son was, like, basically hella jealous. She's like, I don't want him risking the position of my son. So that wasn't great. And the bullying continued, and eventually Kiritsubo dies. Everybody's distraught. The prince, the newest prince, Genji, which they didn't name him at this point, but that's who it is. He goes to live with his maternal grandmother somewhere in the, not within the palace itself, but in like kind of the town surrounding the palace, you know? And so he goes to stay with his grandmother, who is just completely stricken with grief. And the emperor asks her, you know, can Genji come stay with me in the palace? And she was like, you know, I'm so honored that you asked me this, but no, because he has nobody to support him there, and he's going to receive the same kind of bullying that my daughter did, and there won't be anybody there to protect him. I don't think you can protect him. And the emperor was heartbroken, but he saw the logic and all this jazz. And so Genji stayed with his grandmother until she died when he was 6. At which point he then moved into the palace. Now, the emperor was kind of, I don't remember the exact order, but he did want to make Genji the heir apparent. He wanted to name him his heir. However, he didn't because he had no support. And an emperor with no support in court, there I go with the rhyming again, he's not going to stay emperor for very long. You know, how much power does one person actually have? You have to have threads of authority kind of holding you in place. So the emperor decides to make him a citizen so that he's safe, and gives him the name Genji, which is, he names him part of the Minamoto clan, which apparently the translation or alternate translation of the kanji that create that name is Gen, or she/G. So literally Genji. And that's how he gets his name. So now Genji has a name. He's living in the palace and he's studying culture, essentially, in the palace, even though he is officially a citizen, like a commoner. Meanwhile, the emperor is very lonely since his favorite consort died, since Genji's mother died. But he couldn't find anybody who really just like touched him the way that Kiritsubo did. Until a court handmaiden, lady in waiting, something, a woman who works in the palace, essentially a servant of some kind, told the emperor that the previous emperor's fourth daughter was very well, she was very well established in the arts, I guess, and that she reminded this servant of Kiritsubo. Emperor was like, really? I have to meet her. It's hard to believe because nobody else has, reminded me of her, but I have to meet this woman. Now, I could be wrong, but if this woman is the previous emperor's fourth daughter, that would make her the current emperor's half-sister. So we got a lot of good classic royalty incest going on. It doesn't stop there. It keeps going. So he meets her, he loves her, and they get married. Or whatever process you go through when you become another consort for the emperor. I don't know if they're technically wives, if they're second wives, third wives, or if they're just all consorts and all of them are there just for him to have a good time. So he meets her, she moves into the palace, and he also, at this point, Genji is a kid, 6, 7, 8 years old, whatever, up through the age of 12, up until he turns 12. The emperor could not stand to be away from him, so he brought him with him everywhere. Now, in court life in Heian, Japan, so a lot of your translations are going to have commentary on this, or a footnote or something. Mine doesn't specifically, but I know this through exposure to this time period and reading about it, and probably from reading this first chapter as a different, in a different translation. I have read this chapter in the Royal Tyler translation as well, and also probably the Edward Seidensticker back in college, but I don't remember that as much. Anyway, in Heian, in the palace in Heian, Japan, it is generally inappropriate for men and women to actually see each other's faces when they're, at a musical event, an art presentation, a dance, anything like that. There are these screens that hang down from these giant windows or walkways or what have you, and they're kind of see-through, and they're just to prevent like a direct viewing of anybody's face of the opposite gender. So at this point, as I mentioned, Genji was going with his father everywhere. So whenever he would spend time with the new woman that he married, and her name in here is Fujitsubo, Genji would go with his father, and so he would see glimpses of her because he was a child, so it wasn't deemed inappropriate at that point. And he decided, or the emperor wanted Genji to think of her as his mother, since she looks like his mother, because that's how that works. And Genji was definitely interested in her. However, he was not interested in her in that way. I don't know when this officially manifests, whether it's at this point when he is like 10 or 11, or if it's, something that he just finds her fascinating and then realizes after he turns 12. So when Genji turns 12, that was when he went through the ceremony to become a man. His hair had been in like these dual kind of like loop situations. And so it had something to do with like cutting his hair and tying it up top. They changed his outfit. And so like then he presents as a man at the age of 12, which still seems weird to me. It seems very strange, especially considering that he then also got married right after his like adulthood ceremony. Now, the woman that he married, I believe, is his cousin? Yeah, no, I just figured it out. Because the minister of the left, and depending on the translation that you have, the titles and positions of all of these characters is going to change. And so a character might be referred to as 5 different things over the course of the book. Or more. I don't know. I'm hoping it doesn't get too confusing. I think the Royal Tyler version has like a sort of like what a play does when it lists all of the characters and what they're called at the beginning of the chapter. The Dennis Washburn translation does not do that, so I'm hoping the characters will be easier to follow throughout the story. But anyway, so the minister of the left, his main wife is the current emperor's sister, and I think it's his full sister, so they have the same father and mother. And so they had a daughter, and I don't think my translation gives her name at the end of this chapter, but I know that it's Aoi, A-O-I, which is Aoi. And that ends up becoming Genji's wife. So she is his cousin because she's the daughter of his aunt. So yeah, the minister of the left is really excited to get a beautiful, child of the emperor as a wife for his daughter. However, his daughter is not thrilled about it because Genji is 12 and she is 16. And that just doesn't seem right to her. Other interesting information, the minister of the right, who is the rival of the minister of the left, is the crown prince's grandfather. Because the minister of the right is the father of the Kokiden consort. So another character who will become important later, I know. Man, I'm not going to have this insight once we get into later chapters. Y'all going to be like, ooh, she turned into a hot mess. But anyway, another child of the minister of the left and his wife is To no Chujo. And he marries the 4th daughter of the minister of the right. So he is Genji's cousin also because he's the brother of Genji's wife. But To no Chujo and Genji become essentially best friends and rivals throughout what I understand is going to be the rest of the book. So that's a lot of what we've got going on. Some other stuff to mention, they reference art a lot. One thing that everybody in the palace would have had access to and been exposed to and learned and studied was Chinese poetry and history. And so as you're reading the Tale of Genji, you're going to encounter poems. Poems on poems on poems. Poems referencing poems. Poems referencing poems that referenced other poems. It's going to be a poem factory. It's just going to be nonstop poems all the time. And again, part of that is that's just how they spoke. That's how they communicated. And if you were not able to compose a poem on the fly, essentially referencing something and exhibiting that you're cultured while also tying it to whatever conversation was currently taking place, especially if it had something to do with a transient moment, like the beauty of the dew on a leaf or, the leaves falling or something that shows that time does not stand still. If you weren't able to do that on the fly, then you were not considered cultured. So it comes up a lot. Naturally, even at 6 years old, Genji was already a pro at this because he is perfect at everything. This will probably annoy me for a good chunk of the book, but even though there's a lot of problematic ideologies, I suppose, I still do appreciate the way the book talks about beauty and that it enjoys the transience and the fact that it's so appreciative of the fleeting moments that make life possible, essentially. And that's a big part of why this book has endured for 1,000 years. So, yeah. So I think that's a good chunk of what I had to cover for this chapter. I don't want it to go on for too long. So let me know what your thoughts were. What quotes struck you as particularly beautiful? Did anything annoy you about the first chapter? What kind of stuff are you thinking? leave all of your comments down below if you've been reading the Tale of Genji. If you haven't been reading along, or if you don't plan to, feel free to ask questions. If there's information that you feel is lacking for your understanding of the story, you know, I'll try to address it in another video or reply in a comment, or anybody else who's doing the read along can comment as well. I'm really excited for the kinds of discussions that we can have, and I think it's going to be a good time. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you in chapter 2.